Welcome to Hindsight is Horrifying, the show where we take a look back at the movies and TV shows of our youth and we ask, what were they thinking letting kids watch this? I'm Jason Mitchell. I'm here with my co-host, Darth Jader.
Hi, listeners.
And today we are going back in time to take a look at one of the earliest animated feature films. In fact, it was either the second or the third feature film that was entirely computer generated, depending on how you count it. And of course, we're talking about DreamWorks' 1998 picture Antz. Darth, why don't you tell us a little bit about the plot of this one?
Sure thing. The summary on Google is that Z, the worker ant, aka Woody Allen, strives to reconcile his own individuality with the communal work ethic of the ant colony. He falls in love with the ant princess Bala, Sharon Stone, and Z strives to make social inroads, and then he's forced to save the ant colony from the treacherous scheming of the evil General Mandible, who is Gene Hackman. So that's one of the first things we can focus on, is how simply star-studded this movie was.
Yeah, the cast of this movie is the exact opposite of something like a Pixar movie, where Pixar typically is going to be one or two headliners, right, at most.
Then maybe some good character actors for the background characters.
Yeah.
But no, not this movie. This movie includes not just those three actors. It's also got Dan Aykroyd, Anne Bancroft, Jane Curtin, Danny Glover, Jennifer Lopez, before she made it super big as an actress, and John Mahoney. So there are quite a few big names.
The late John Mahoney. He just passed.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Poor Fraser's dad.
Yeah.
But
no, it is from a cast perspective, it's really interesting, and it's very significant because, this movie was made, it came out in 1998, so we're talking about an era before animated movies, computer-generated movies were anything approaching prestigious. So to get someone like Gene Hackman...
Right, and Sharon Stone.
Yeah. I mean, Gene Hackman's... or Woody Allen, honestly. I mean, really, even today, it's kind of surprising to think they made this movie with Woody Allen as the main character.
Which is a hard sell when you're talking about... It's PG-13, so it is technically a kid's movie, because younger kids could go and see it, but it is a very Woody Allen-tasting film in the sense that all the jokes are very highbrow and largely sarcastic.
Yeah.
And just sort of taking the sneer off of his own colony. But yeah, it is definitely a Woody Allen film for sure.
And it's weird because it's a Woody Allen film that would not work. The cast wouldn't really work at all as a live action movie.
Oh, I couldn't see a single one of those actors really having great chemistry together, except maybe Christopher Walken and Gene Hackman.
Yeah, Christopher Walken's
also in it.
That would be fantastic. But I mean, Stallone as Woody Allen's friend that grew up with them.
And Jennifer Lopez as Stallone's girlfriend. That's just...
Well, or Sharon Stone and Woody Allen...
Being together,
ending up together. Well, I
don't think she's quite young enough for Woody Allen to be interested, to be perfectly honest. So
it was Sun-Yi.
What happened?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's Woody Allen. Anytime you discuss Woody Allen, it gives everybody the opportunity to dust off their Woody Allen impersonation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, especially in the beginning, because we do have a very Woody Allen-esque type opening to the movie where he's actually in the room with his psychologist making some, kind of cutesy humor about bugs, because he's sitting there saying, oh, when you're the middle child in a family of 5 million, and it's just sort of nodding at the fact that they are ants. And he calls his dad, he said, my dad was just a drone. He flew away when I was just a larvae, and just silly things like that. But then his so-called breakthrough that he gets, which actually sets the tone for the entire movie, in the sense that it's very anti-communist, as we were discussing before we started recording.
Yeah, it's interesting because we usually, the idea of talking about things that we didn't get when we were kids, a big part of that, most of the time, you're talking about jokes that were dirty jokes, or jokes about things that we didn't get as kids. This is a movie that I know whenever I saw it whenever I was younger, it didn't click with me at all. That the movie is really a George Orwell or Ayn Rand or Aldous Huxley-esque narrative about communism and about how bad it is.
Which is why I think when people think back to the comparison between Antz and A Bug's Life, for instance, which was also made in 1998, A Bug's Life was definitely more geared toward children. It has brighter coloring. The characters are a little more zany. It's a kid's movie, distinctly. Whereas Antz, I think a lot of people who grew up watching Antz and then, compared to A Bug's Life, they probably look at Antz as being kind of boring, because there are stretches that, where this movie is just absolutely brilliant with some of its highbrow humor and its social commentary. But as a kid, you're just like, boring, let's get to the fun stuff. So I think that may be a big comparison difference between A Bug's Life and Antz.
Yeah, I think so. A Bug's Life, and I'm not judging one way or the other. I love both of them.
Oh yeah, they're both great.
Yeah. A Bug's Life is more of a traditional hero's journey, everyman sort of story.
Right.
You've got the guy who's he's the underdog. Everybody, judges him to be incompetent, and ultimately he is the one who has the responsibility to save everybody.
Sure.
In this one, Woody Allen's character, Z, his motivation for most of the movie is not to save everybody. That's really only something that comes up at the very, very end, because he doesn't know that there's a threat.
Right. Nobody does, but
yeah.
He's really more about breaking free and discovering his individuality, and along with Insectopia. Yeah,
I mean, and that's the movie begins in the first scene. They're establishing that
the hive mind colony mentality is the way to be, and being an individual is considered a negative thing.
Yeah, in order to avoid punishment by the society they live in, they must be insignificant, and they must do every single thing. Their own personality and personal needs and desires and whatever are irrelevant. All that anyone cares about is for the benefit of the greater good.
Yep, for the good of the colony.
Yeah, you work and work and work, not so that you can get the fruits of your own rewards, but so that you can contribute to this big pool that somebody else gets to divvy out to, the workers and the soldiers and everybody else. And that's communism. And I really don't think it's much of a reach to say that they did it on purpose, because if you look at the symbol that the workers have, it's a circle, and it's two crossed tools. One is a pickaxe, and the other one is I think it's like a pitchfork.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, but it's obviously a reference to a hammer and sickle.
Sure.
Yeah, and
especially with the vague goals of the colony, because General Mandible, Gene Hackman, is telling them all it's very Shaun of the Dead, or not Shaun of the Dead, but
Hot Fuzz.
Hot Fuzz, yeah. The greater good.
The greater good, yeah.
And they don't know what this greater good is. It's just this vague possible light at the end of the tunnel that they all desperately want to achieve, but none of them really understand why.
Right. I mean, it's work. Don't think. Don't rest. Don't do anything like that. Just work. Do as you're told, and trust in the fact that your betters up above you are making all the right decisions. And it's even interesting because when you look at the way that the government in this world works, it is nominally a monarchy, but really the monarchs are just figureheads. Her only role is to pump out babies.
Right.
The
she
military
even says something along the lines of, how would you feel if you had to give birth every 10 seconds for the rest of your life?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I'm sure all you ladies out there agree, we wouldn't be able to get anything done if that was the case. So, yeah, she really is just a figurehead, because she's not... the queen and her princess daughter, they just trust the general to run things, and they're just as oblivious as everyone else.
Yeah. I mean, the monarchy is irrelevant. The source of power and is the military, and also in this evidently classless society, you still have people at the top who are getting the nice perks and the breaks and all that, and everybody else suffering. And Z goes on a very interesting journey that because this is a movie about communism. And it's really very intelligent because the journey that he goes on is, if you are someone who is brought up in a communist society, which is a society that promises you utopia but never delivers on it, you're going to think, well, if I leave here, what should I do? I'm going to go actually find that utopia that was always promised to me but never delivered on.
Which is very cleverly disguised in this movie as Insectopia.
Yeah.
Which is brought up by John Mahoney's character. He's a drunk ant in a bar, and, you think he's this raving drunk lunatic, but he's like, kid, you gotta find Insectopia. It's past the monolith. It's this big mystical thing. And then they drag him off, and, he's portrayed as kind of a crazy person.
Right. And it's not a metaphor when... In a lot of movies, and I would say probably in a Pixar movie, if they said past the monolith and over to here, you would realize, oh, well, it's a water fountain. The monolith is actually a water fountain, and the thing that he's seeing is actually a garbage can. But he would actually find it.
Yes.
In this one, the garbage can ends up being just a garbage can because Utopia or Insectopia does not exist.
Nope.
It's a myth. So the hero's journey actually ends up being very brief at the end of the movie, with Z realizing that Insectopia is meaningless and going back home to change things and liberalize his own society.
Right. It actually turns out to be a good thing that Insectopia is, just smoke and mirrors, because it actually drives him to achieve a greater good than he would have otherwise, which is literally just abandoning his society and taking the princess with him.
Right.
And she also would be shirking her future queenly duties of producing more ants for the colony.
Right.
But this all really gets kicked off by the fact that Z and his friend Weaver, aka Sylvester Stallone, they scheme together to basically chase after girls, because Z runs into Princess Bala, who, as she says a little bit later in the movie, she's slumming it, looking for a little bit of trouble in the bar, which those kind of phrases don't often appear in kids' movies, but...
I don't think this is a kids' movie.
I don't think it is either, but it was rated PG-13, so there were kids that were definitely going to see it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think it is intended for adults. But even when so Z and Bala meet in the bar in the colony, and what's really hilarious about that scene is that Weaver and Azteca, Jennifer Lopez's character, are both more than happy doing what they do for the colony. They're happy to serve their purpose. But they're all in the bar that night together, and the dancing starts. And usually dancing is just sort of this random, everybody getting down.
Well, yeah, they do line dancing.
Yeah, even the dancing in their world is controlled, and they all have to do the same dance. Except for Z, who is literally dancing to his own beat in the middle of the crowd and running into people and pissing them off. So,
yeah, I mean, it really is kind of fascinating. Even the dancing is political. Mm-hmm. It's you're out in public and you dance according to the way that you are supposed to dance.
Yep.
That's and that is, people throw the word totalitarian around, but what totalitarian really means is it's a government whose influence is total, meaning it's not limited to anything. So even to the point of saying how people should dance.
Right.
What you do with your free time. In this one, there's the sign up somewhere that says free time is for practice or
it's
training.
For training, yeah.
Yeah. It he kind of looks like Hellboy there.
He's like the Juggernaut of Antz, Sylvester Stallone in this movie. He's even typecast in his voiceover acting.
Yeah.
But there's a great moment in the bar scene before we move on to this digging scene.
Is this the part where she says something about filling in?
Yeah. We'll get to that in a second. But we're still in the bar scene. It's really hilarious because, what did they say? Oh, even the drinks that they're drinking are kind of weird, and it's a little obvious that it's another insect that they're drinking out of, and
right, yeah.
Stallone is like, do you want your
Aphid beer.
Yeah, aphid beer. And Z's like, no, I'm not a big fan of drinking out of something else's anus.
Yeah. No, yeah, I don't. Yeah, how many kids even knew what the word anus meant when they saw this?
Well, it depends on how old they were, but
Well, yeah.
I would have been in 1998. I would have been about 10 or 11, so I probably knew it by then.
Yeah, it's and like I said, it's hard to see this as a kid's movie because it's. And again, I say that, but I saw it whenever I was a kid, and I liked it. And I didn't think I was watching something that wasn't a kid's movie.
Right, because it's a cartoon, which used to
Yeah.
translate to kids programming. But going back to the dancing scene real quickly, even the commentary on the situation is very highbrow because Z is looking at all the dancers before Bala comes in and shakes up his world. He goes, "Oh, what a bunch of losers, mindless zombies capitulating to an oppressive system." And it's just... Even the dialogue in this movie is so highbrow, it's kind of ridiculous.
Well, it is, and it's interesting because the plot of the movie ultimately it boils down to you have the military of this society, in which all the real power is invested.
It's all about anti-communism and chasing girls.
Yeah. Well, that's America.
Well, that's what honestly motivates Z and gets him into all this trouble is that he meets Princess Bala at the bar. They have a great night dancing, and then she's got to rush off and go back to her life. And so he trades places with Weaver, Stallone's character, who is a soldier, so that he can be at the soldier assembly the next day and possibly get to interact with Bala again. So from there, Z gets put on an even worse conveyor belt than he was already on,
Right.
because what he doesn't realize is that General Mandible is trying to sabotage his own army by sending them off to battle a whole tree trunk full of termites that apparently shoot acid out of their heads.
And what's the general's name?
Mandible.
Mandible. General Mandible is so much Joseph Stalin. It's ridiculous. I mean, what he does is, and I mean, if you take a step back and you think, could you say this and describe an actual country, an actual political situation? The military government decides that it is going to purge its society of those that are deemed unfit.
Which is pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
It was a
All
very...
the workers.
Yeah, all the workers and a lot of the soldiers, because the soldiers
Yeah.
are the first wave of people that he kills.
But, well, that's what I was saying, though. In order to accomplish that, though, you have to take the military elements that you either would have a problem with or that you don't want to bring along on the ride.
That could potentially stand up to you.
Step one, eliminate them so that you can't, consolidate your own political position vis-a-vis the military by purging the military. Then once you're done with that, you go from purging to a reign of terror where you just start eliminating and exterminating the parts of your society that you could consider to be weak.
Which is what we get around to, where Z has to rescue the colony because the general who has been driving them toward this greater good is actually scheming to drown every single worker in the ant colony.
Yeah, and it's a very vague, that is one thing that I would like to know more about, which is, because he refers to them as being the undesirable or the weak.
The weak, yeah.
Weak. But it's sort of like, okay, well, and I know that you can replace them all. So does he have a problem with just how the workers are treated? Like they need to be worked even harder? He's already working them 24 hours a day, basically.
And then he ups their shifts to
Yeah.
double shifts. And what's really funny is he motivates them with breadcrumbs, essentially,
Yeah.
because what happens is Z goes off to war and unwittingly has to battle all these termites. He finds a war buddy in Danny Glover, who is like, "Don't worry, kid, I'll look out for you." And so they become pals really quickly. But the ants are so used to this conveyor belt communistic mentality that as they're going off to war, they're singing "The Ants Go Marching," but they've modified it a little where it's like, "The ants go marching one by one, hurrah, hurrah, we'll all be dead before we're done, hurrah, hurrah." So they're just okay with that.
Yeah, it's a very fatalistic society. You've been taught you're irrelevant, your life is probably going to be short, it'll probably end violently. So if we point and tell you to march into this battle, just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, and they're fine with it.
And don't think about it. Don't question it. You know, the whole movie comes down to an individual questioning society, and, you know...
And Z does that every chance he gets because he's fighting the system the whole time. But
Right.
but in a very Woody Allen fashion, like when they're in their rank and file and they're marching off to war, Z's like, "Wait, we're going to war." He's like, "Wait, does our platoon serve beverages or process paperwork?
Yeah.
Why don't we just try to influence their political process with campaign contributions?"
These pretzels are making me thirsty.
Thirsty.
Well, yeah, you know, and that's... It's funny because that's... And it's only this way because it's Woody Allen. But it is very much more akin to an older movie, like an Ernst Lubitsch movie. You know,
Okay.
There's a movie called Ninochka. Which
God bless you.
Yeah, thank you. Ninochka, 1938 or 39, something like that. Very anti-Soviet movie. And there's a lot in this movie that reminds me of some of the themes of it. You know, there's a part in the movie where one of the characters says, you know, well, the way Stalin's running things, there'll be a lot fewer Russians, but there'll be better Russians.
Oh, God.
You know, and that's because that was a justification in Stalin's mind. You know, it's okay if I kill, you know, several million people. The ones that are left will be better.
Because he views it as kind of a cleansing, as
because the
as
people,
opposed to annihilation and genocide.
Because the individual doesn't have any sort of special quality. I don't need to worry about preserving the life of an individual.
Right.
If I kill 100,000 of them, but I end up with better individuals, then I win. I did good.
Which is so crazy for people to ever have had that. I mean, even as an ant, I can sort of justify it when there's a queen pumping out 10,000 babies at the drop of a hat, but people don't quite reproduce that quickly.
Yeah, and this was a real political philosophy that people to this day, some people still adhere to. You know, it's amazing, and you know, there's another line from that movie where somebody says, somebody takes a phone call for, you know, comrade so and so, and oh, he's not here. He was recalled back to Russia to be investigated. Please contact his widow for more details.
Oh, God. Because you know that's exactly that's exactly what she is now. But while Z's being marched off to war,
do you know this scene? Is this a reference to Independence Day, or does it just sort of look like Independence Day?
Well, we're skipping ahead now because the movie's ahead of us, so we're just trying to go in order at the moment. But are you talking about the magnifying glass?
Yeah, the magnifying glass.
Yeah, there's a great special effect with that, and I have notes about it, so we'll get to it. But while Z's off at war, basically, what you were talking about with Weaver and Azteca, because Stallone, naturally, his character is an absolute boss at moving dirt, which is Z's normal job. Most of the ants have to hold the pick with 2 hands, but he's like double fisting the pickaxes and just going at it like a machine. And Jennifer Lopez introduces herself, and she's like, "Hi, who are you? Where's Z?" And he's like, "Oh, well, Z's taking a personal day. I'm filling in." And she looks him up and down, and she goes, "Well, if you fill in anymore, you'll explode." So there is some kind of saucy adult humor.
And burritos.
Oh, God. Jennifer Lopez.
My name is Jennifer.
Well, at least she's not dating Ben Affleck, so in this movie. It's not as terrible as it could be.
Yeah, it could always be worse. Ben Affleck could be here.
But they do have a great moment, Weaver and Azteca, where she mouths off at their supervisor to defend him, and she gets her rations taken away for having the gall to talk back, and then Weaver offers to share his rations with her, and she's like, "What does that mean? You asking me out to dinner?" And it's just...
and Weaver's kind of an idiot. You know?
Yeah, and so they...
no.
No, of course not. But of course, they're going to fall in love with each other.
Which doesn't really... That's sort of the thing that I guess they just have to brush it over. So it's like, well, the queen has a baby every 10 seconds.
It's like, is there a use for any of the ants to couple up? Like, I'm not really sure.
Well, it is sort of weird because, and it's a movie. We should all just relax.
Suspend your damn disbelief, Jason. It's a bunch of communist ants.
Yeah, it's sort of like, well, does it make any sense? Well, it doesn't really make any sense, period. But you do have to ask, okay, she's having a baby every 10 seconds. And clearly this is a society where men like ladies.
Right.
So does that mean that there's someone behind the scenes with the queen?
I really don't know, because another aspect of it is that Princess Bala is actually promised to General Mandible. So I'm not really sure how ants reproduce exactly.
Yeah, actually, I'm realizing that I don't know nearly as much about ant reproduction as I should.
It's pretty basic, but I don't know if she needs to be impregnated that often. I don't know. I really don't know.
I don't know either.
I'm looking this up. But yeah, like the whole rest of the society seems to be kind of coupling up. Like Weaver likes Azteca, and
yeah, he's constantly talking about those worker girls.
Yeah, which is his driving force behind switching his entire life and career.
They're career women.
And, that was a great moment in the bar where, because Weaver's trying to get Z to cut loose and go and talk to one of the girls, and Z's like, they're career women, they're obsessed with digging. Yeah. And it's like, does that make them the opposite of gold diggers? Like,
I'm now realizing that the whole idea of what motivates the ants, because they don't do anything other than work and fight wars.
Right.
Like, you don't see any ants that like secretly want to be a painter, or an ant that's actually, a musician, but he's not allowed to be a musician. They really don't seem to know. Like, that's their entire universe, is literally being born.
There's no one even preparing or collecting food. It's war and dirt shifting.
Well, and the movie does sort of undercut one of its own, sort of emotional premises, because they keep making the joke that, well, we're going to start a family, we'll have 2 or 3 million, children. If you're having millions of children, and your ant colony isn't, dying because there's not enough food, doesn't that mean that you're literally losing millions every year in order to keep things in check?
I suppose so, but looking on Google, our ever-trusty friend, with as far as the ant reproduction and the millions and millions of ants, apparently some female ants do not need to mate to reproduce, to produce offspring. Reproducing through asexual parthenogenesis. Yes, thank you, or cloning, and all of those offspring. You gotta
say it all sexy. Parthenogenesis.
Well, it's asexual.
Yeah,
so why would you say it's sexy?
Oh yeah.
And apparently, all the ants that come from parthenogenesis are actually they'll be female. Others, like those in the genus Crematogaster, mate in a nuptial flight. So
I got a buddy of mine who did a nuptial flight.
Oh my god! He joined the 3 feet high club because they can't get that high off the ground.
He ran away from the altar.
Oh god! He pulled a runaway
groom. What a weekend!
But the queen offspring developed from larvae specifically fed in order to become sexually mature amongst most species. Depending on the species, depending on the species, there can be either a single mother queen or potentially hundreds of fertile queens. So
she's a single mother trying to get by.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. So essentially, every ant colony is a Tyler Perry movie.
Awesome. I was thinking it was an ABC sitcom.
Oh, really?
Like she's a single mom.
I was thinking more like Meet the Browns, where she's the single mom struggling to make it with, a bunch of kids.
Ooh, I knew a single mom who tried to make it with every guy she met.
Oh, snap. Bye, single moms. Bye.
Sorry, Mom.
At least we didn't lose a nation this time. We just lost several
Yeah, I know.
thousand.
I mean, that's true. I mean, well, because we're talking about ants. It's not like, I mean, I suppose China.
Oh, goodness. But do ants get taxed for multiple children the way the Chinese do? I don't think they do.
Well, that's true. I thought the Chinese killed you.
No, you just get very heavily taxed.
Oh.
Now, there is a thing where many children end up abandoned because their parents don't want to be taxed, but...
Chinese tax deduction.
So this is all very much like ants. Did you really just do that? So anyway, now that we've discovered the reproductive policies of ants, one of the bigger things that happens in the movie is that Z does go off to war. He makes friends with Danny Glover, who plays Barbados, is his character's name. And they battle, and this is one of the reasons why it's not necessarily a kid's movie, because the battle between the ants and the termites is savage AF. The ants are being spewed at with the acid, and they're melting, and it's really violent considering it's a cartoon. But
oh yeah, Danny Glover ends up a severed head.
Yes, and that was a great bit too. Z's he's the lone survivor, and the only reason he does survive is because he falls into a hole, and one of the termite bodies is kind of blocking him from sight.
Yeah.
So he's safe, but then he does find Danny Glover's severed head, which is inexplicably able to talk. And he's like, "Lift me up, Z. I can't feel my legs. Is it bad?" And you're like, "Dude, you have no legs." It's pretty bad. But in very Woody Allen fashion, he's sitting there trying to tell him, "Oh, don't worry, Barbados, you have swell color. I'm gonna try and find your body." And then he turns around, and it's just a sea of ant bodies and ant body parts. And it's actually kind of a touching moment, because Barbados...
Well, yeah, it is.
Yeah, Barbados's last words to Z are, "Don't make my mistakes, kid. Think for yourself." And then he closes his little decapitated eyes.
I'm only one day from retirement. And I'm getting too old for this shit.
Oh, goodness. Just had to bring in some Lethal Weapon.
Yeah. It's got to be on... When Danny Glover dies, it needs to be...
That needs to be on his tombstone.
It needs to be on his
kind
tombstone.
of Jack Lemmon style.
I'm getting too old for this shit. No, Danny Glover.
Jack Lemmon
Danny Glover. He got too old for this shit.
Oh, God. We need to sign a petition to make
Danny
that
Glover,
happen.
if you're out there, that needs to be on your tombstone. I'm an expert on what people should have on their tombstones, by the way.
Hashtag tombstone petition. Join us on Twitter for this movement. We're making it happen, social media goers.
Yeah. What was the thing I said years ago? Because I've thought about this many times, what I want on my tombstone. Because one of the advantages of your tombstone is that nobody fact checks a tombstone. No one does. I mean, you don't walk through a cemetery and see something on a tombstone and go, "That doesn't sound right. I'm going to Google that."
Huh.
You know. So mine, I'm going to put. It's going to say Jason Mitchell, 19 blah 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 to 2000 blah blah blah, Apollo astronaut.
And there might have been an Apollo astronaut named Jason Mitchell. You never know. I know. I'm just saying that's a bold-faced lie. Exactly. You don't have to fact-check that.
Exactly. It's a total lie. But with the level of education in our country, I feel totally confident that people would go, "Wow, did you know there's an Apollo astronaut buried over there?"
See, I think now you're inspiring me for thoughts for my own tombstone. I think I'm going to list the fact that I have an English degree, and then I'm going to put a quote, but have some misspelling and some incorrect grammar. It's going to be fantastic.
You have to put, something like misuse, Y-O-U-R-E, or Y-O-U-R-E without the apostrophe. You
Exactly.
Go through that. Just have typos all over it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the whole idea.
In fact, if you die first, or win,
Oh, God.
I'll write your obituary, and it's going to be nothing but typos.
I'm going to be rolling over in my grave, but from laughter, so it'll be all right.
So I said that too at my funeral. I want to be dressed in like a clown costume.
Oh, God.
Because I don't want anybody laughing or anybody sad.
You want them to be terrified because clowns are terrifying.
Well, then something funny, like dress me as...
Well, I'll just recommend to your wife that you need to have one of those little goof hats that looks like an arrow's been shot through your head.
That would be perfect.
It'll be fantastic.
That would be...
You'll be holding a rubber chicken.
Yes, yeah. See, I want people, instead of go boo, I want them looking out in the coffin and go, what the
Of course he would.
What the hell?
Of course he would.
Well,
that's the only funeral you're allowed to for the rest of the rest of your life because of all the necrophilia on the previously recorded episodes that we have. So I guess you need to put some extra planning into this one since it'll be the last one you're ever going to be allowed to attend.
Yeah, well, you know.
But speaking of death, after all the ants get wiped out in the war against the termites, which was just suicide, Z does come back to the colony, and he's celebrated as a war hero. And when he comes back, there's this huge rally of ants waiting for him, and the signs that they're holding up in the crowd are hysterical. Yeah. One of them says, "Welcome home, troops," with the S crossed out.
Yeah. And that is sort of that is a very old... it's a Cold War statement in and of itself because, you know, during the Cold War, there was this mentality amongst a lot of people that if at the end of the war there are two of us and one of you left, we won. Oh,
there was a sign that said that in the crowd too. It said 1-0. Right. We win.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and it's a very intelligent movie. I have to admit, I was very surprised. I was not all that excited about doing this one.
I could tell.
But I was genuinely surprised at how much I enjoyed it was a much more intelligent movie than like all the other DreamWorks animated movies. You know, I mean, you know, come on, Kung Fu Panda versus this.
Oh, okay. Well, that's no contest. That's apples and oranges right there. Yeah. But yeah, the humor, it stays highbrow throughout the entire movie because when Z comes back, you've got General Mandible showing him off and presenting him as a war hero, and that's great. And the general, in true, you know, communist kind of fashion, the general's speaking for Z. Because Z is, right. General says, "You are an ant after my own heart, an ant that looks death in the face and laughs." And this line made me laugh because Z said, "Well, actually, the truth is I generally just make belittling comments and snicker behind death's back." And after a minute, Z was saying, "It's, you know, it was carnage, it was suicide. I don't know why we were going." And General Mandible covers his little mouth with his hand and he starts speaking for Z, like, "Oh, Z is very proud to have served his colony." And
which is straight up. I mean, that is literally, you know, Yuri Gagarin, the first man in space. When he comes back, you know, they parade him all over the place and says, "Look at Yuri Gagarin, look how amazing, you know, this great hero of the Soviet Union is." It was the exact same thing, where you had Khrushchev or one of Khrushchev's goons essentially saying, "I'm here with Yuri Gagarin, and I'm going to tell you all the things he has to say."
Yep. And Z is very self-deprecating about it because he did not accomplish anything. He didn't kill a single termite. He just hid, basically.
No.
Until
surviving.
Yes, until he runs into Princess Bala, who, for some reason, just because he has an army helmet on, she doesn't recognize him. But he sees her.
I can forgive that. That's an old movie trope. You know?
She saw him the night before. Like, I don't. That's what's crazy.
Well, she was probably just drunk off her ass too.
Off of the ass beer.
Yeah, you know, I mean, you suck beer out of an aphid's ass long enough, you know,
it's gonna happen.
They probably had a little bit of. They did some pre-drinking before they, you know, showed up. Also, must not be a lot of security around the royal family.
I'm guessing not. Well, I mean, they're just figureheads, like you said. They're not that terribly relevant, so...
Probably what security they have is more inclined to keep them from ever making a connection with the working class people.
Right.
Because as soon as they make that connection, and she realizes, oh, my people are suffering. You know?
She had no idea that was happening at all. But the second Z sees her and they're thanking him for his service, he goes, "Oh, it was nothing really, just your average run-of-the-mill, you know, extraordinary courageousness." And then he starts, you know, fluffing his feathers a little bit. And Bala, she does completely blow their cover because Z's trying to be a little bit subtle because they
Bala's kind of stupid.
A little bit.
Yeah.
They exchanged a word at the bar, which was "youch." And then when he sees her again, because she has no recollection as to who he is, he leans in and he's like, "Well, you know, youch." And she goes, "Oh, I remember you. You're that ant from the bar." And her mom and the general are like, "Wait, what the hell were you doing in a bar?" And she's like, and Z's sitting there trying to make her be quiet. She's like, "No, we went out dancing and this happened." And then they try to drag Z away because that's considered a crime.
Yeah. You know, and she's she's oblivious to the fact. I mean, that is sort of a thing. It's not that she doesn't care that what she's doing is going to get him killed. It's the fact that it's obvious to everyone else that what she's doing is going to get him killed. But she really doesn't know that that's how it works.
No, she's completely oblivious.
Yeah, she doesn't know that, well, okay, they're going to drag him away and torture him and kill him.
Yeah, because of his inappropriate associations with the
yeah.
princess. But so he has to resort to drastic measures. He kind of grabs onto her while he's backing away from the soldiers, and then they automatically assume that he's kidnapping Bala.
Right.
And so they're backing away, and in true Acme form of Wile E. Coyote forgetting that he's running out of room on which to stand on the ledge, they back up to the point where they fall down the trash chute and out of the
conveniently located, incredibly dangerous,
which is where the queen is.
Person-sized trash chute.
Because we all know we always park the queen right next to the garbage.
Yeah, and it's the perfect size that if you're kind of drunk or just clumsy and you trip near that thing, you're going to get shot out the side of the colony.
And that is what it is, but going back to that Independence Day shot that you were talking about, that's where this leads us, because they come out of the garbage chute, and Bala is like, okay, well, we're going back, and then these soldiers run out to come and fetch Bala and rescue her, and all of a sudden you see this strange, and they give it almost like a spacecraft kind of mentality, the sound of it, and you realize it's a magnifying glass. And as a person, you realize the horrible thing that's about to happen to these poor ants.
That kid is a really steady hand.
Yes, he does.
He should grow up to be a surgeon.
You never actually see that it's a kid. You just see a hand.
That's true. The only reason
you assume it's a kid, though.
I assumed it's a kid because you assume that it's the same, and I guess there's no reason to think that, but because now that I think about it, that was two totally different scenes. When you see the kid
in the park.
And that's right. That wasn't actually right then. That was
later. But things get savage as all get out because the soldiers who are coming to get Bala, and they kind of treat the magnifying glass like a spacecraft because they've never seen one before. And the kid just sort of hovers it over one ant.
Didn't they notice the massive human being who was attached to it?
I think they were just distracted by the pretty glass. But one of the soldiers is just fascinated by the magnifying glass. He's like, look, it's beautiful. And they're like, get out of there. Because the rest of them seem to know what's going to happen. But he's like, oh, I can't look away. And then he bursts into flames.
Of course they know what's going to happen. When they were kids, they used to do it. Everyone did that when they were a kid.
No, I mean, the other ants know.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But so then, of course, Z and Bala are running for their lives through the wilderness that is blades of grass. And they get away from the magnifying glass, and Bala's yelling at him, and she's just upset because she's been kidnapped.
And I really like that, too, that Woody Allen's character at that point was basically like, I really don't care, lady.
Yeah, I'm out of it. He's like, he
go back. I don't care.
Yeah, he's like, you take yourself back. Like, I'm going to find Insectopia.
Yeah, I really appreciated the fact that, unlike in pretty much every other movie, this is the girl that he's in love with, and she's saying, no, you have to do this, and he's totally fine just leaving her.
He's like, that's cool. I don't have time for this. But he has a great line after they outrun the magnifying glass because Bala's all pissed off, and he goes, oh, come on. You're not going to let a little near-death experience ruin your mood, are you? And she goes, my God, I have been kidnapped by the village idiot.
Yes, well, yeah.
Just a little.
Woody Allen is an action hero, too.
I know, that's hard to reconcile.
Yeah. He saves everyone. Well, he does, but really the real hero was Christopher Walken.
Of course. Christopher Walken saves the day in the movie, spoiler
He totally
alert.
does.
And normally he's kind of a villainous, if not zany character.
Yeah, and I read somewhere that originally, it's not Chopper. Chopper's from A Bug's Life. Cutter, yeah.
That's Christopher Walken.
Cutter, yeah. Chopper's the rapey one. Cutter's Christopher Walken.
Oh, God.
Well, it was Kevin Spacey, so...
Yeah,
therefore
I'm getting the association.
Yeah, therefore he was rapey.
Yeah.
Cutter, I read somewhere that apparently the way it was originally written was he was really... Like, he didn't really even have any lines, hardly.
Oh, really?
But when Christopher Walken started doing it, some genius went, wait a minute, we have Christopher Walken.
We need more cowbell.
Hey, you, writer.
Make it happen.
Someone let the writers out of their boxes and tell them to write more dialogue.
Make it so.
Yes, master.
Oh, God. But yeah, like, Cutter, he does end up being the hero, but in the meantime, we get to that very sexual content where Bala's trying to argue to go back, and she's basically telling Z that he's a loser, and he goes, well, excuse me, but you were the one who walked into the bar the other night looking for a little action. And he's like, and of course you fell for the swarthy, earthy, sensual worker. And she said, Bala responds with the fact that I was slumming it, which is just great. And Z goes, you know what? I was going to let you become part of my most erotic fantasies, but now you can just forget that. And he just walks away from her.
And that is a line that is so good. I wish that I would have the opportunity to use it.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, that's just, can you imagine?
No, I think
imagine telling a girl that, I was going to put you in there. You were going to pop in there.
Now you don't make the cut.
Yeah, you don't get to pop in there anymore.
You're cut from the team. Well, I think the best possible thing you can do with that, Jason, is to start using it at random.
Well, that's true.
Like if a cashier at the grocery store makes a random mistake. Oh, sorry, sir, I doubled rang this up. My bad. And you can be like, you know what? You were going to be part of my most erotic fantasies, but you can just forget it.
I'm just going to
get out of here.
That's going to be it from now on.
It's going to be great. No context. Just throw it at them, and they won't know what to do with it.
Bloody jihad on you.
Oh, yeah. Well, that took it up a notch or two, but
Oh, it's the same idea.
It's very April Ludgate thing to say.
Yeah. There was something else that the whole relationship between the two of them. She said something like, "I only picked you because you were the biggest loser."
Yeah, you were the most pathetic loser in the place. Yeah,
which I don't know what universe that actually occurs in. It's like, does that actually happen? Do women walk into a bar and just pick the biggest loser? And
I guess if they are slumming it because they're going for an easy target. That's never been my goal when walking into a bar, so I'm not 100% sure.
And I've never met a woman in a bar, because I would have noticed. If she was looking for the biggest loser, I would have noticed her. Because she would have come and said hi.
Oh. Wah, wah.
Yeah, I got beer.
Yes, apparently it's kicking in.
Beer was my companion when I was at a bar, as God intended it.
And the beer doesn't care what kind of a loser you are.
No, it doesn't.
It is not judgmental.
Beer is your friend.
Yeah. And speaking of which, with this very exciting beer conversation, we are actually enjoying a couple of beers from our favorite brewery, which is Variant in Roswell. I am a creature of habit, so I am naturally drinking the raspberry lemon goza because I like fruity things, and I'm not a big fan of beer in general, but this is really delicious.
Yeah, it's good beer when somebody who doesn't like beer drinks it every time we do the show.
Yep, it's becoming a tradition.
Yeah, I know. I look forward to this. This is the highlight of my week is, having somebody bring a beer to me. That's where I'm at in my life.
What he doesn't know is that I'm slowly training him in Pavlovian style, listeners.
I don't care. Whatever, it's beer.
Hey, you get your beer. Be happy.
That beer is poisoned, right? I don't care.
Oh, well.
It's fine.
I'll go out enjoying myself.
I had a psych professor who trained his girlfriend using Pavlovian methods.
That's very Jim and Dwight of him.
He did. He and he told us this in class. He basically admitted to it. Or he did. What he would do is whenever she was engaging in behavior that he found desirable, he would adjust the thermostat in their apartment to a temperature that he knew she liked. Mm-hmm. And anytime that she would do something that he did not approve of, he would change the temperature. And so
that's psychotic.
It's so psychotic. And it's like at the time we're sitting, we listen to it going, oh, really? Now looking back on it, did anyone think to call the police?
Yeah, I think she might have been under duress.
And it helped that she was chained to her bed.
Yes, limited mobility. Yeah. I could see that becoming a kind of funny bit on a comedy show, though, where, every time you piss off your husband, he stares at you and then just passive-aggressively reaches for the thermostat dial.
Well, it's amazing how many things that we're so sensitive to, we don't know it. And if somebody can just get control of them, they can just so mess us up.
They can be our puppet master. But speaking of breaking the strings of your puppet master, Z is actually running away from Bala because, like he says, we're outside of the colony. You're not in charge of me anymore, because she's trying to still order him around to get him to take her back home. And he's basically like, yeah, let me march right back into my death. Sure, that's what I'm going to do. But he climbs to the top of this little plant, and then he sees what we recognize as a water fountain, but he gasps and goes, it's the monolith that the drunk ant was telling him about in the bar that will lead him to Insectopia.
Which again, it's getting back to the sort of the thesis that I had. It's, he's envisioning this place where, and literally what the bug before it said, the ant before it said, the streets are paved with food.
Yes.
Such a cliched statement. And when they get there, the food is there, covered in plastic.
Which they think he calls it a force field.
Force field. And then the two people from outside, the Dan Aykroyd and Jane Curtin's characters, the bees, I guess they were bees.
Yeah, they were bees, and they were very condescending, snooty bees.
They're wealthy people who don't live in the communist society.
Yes, and they benefit from all of the rewards that are outside of the communist lifestyle.
And they literally completely don't know how to treat this person that that's coming from this society. It's like, well, we have to help them.
Well, they have very differing opinions on that, because Dan Aykroyd's character Chip is like, oh, Muffy, don't get close to them. They're filthy. He calls them Euro trash.
Yeah, Euro trash. Which is so weird, because it's like, well, you have a very European accent.
Yeah, he's the snooty one.
No.
But Muffy, the wife, she's even condescending in her attempts to help them, because she's like, oh, look at them, darling. They're just so poor and pathetic,
they're very
and dirty.
New England blue blood, old money types.
Yes.
And then she gets the hell killed out of her.
Yeah, she gets hit with the fly swatter.
Yeah.
So they're at the picnic table. Meanwhile, though, what's happening back at the colony is Z's war hero status has incited a revolution amongst the workers. It occurs to them that because they find out that Weaver switched places with Z, and they're like, wait, you can do that? You mean I don't have to be moving dirt? And so there's this great line where one of the manager goes, oh, I know some ants that aren't going to meet their quota, when they're all throwing down their little pickaxes, and one of them just goes, buzz off, pawn of the oppressor, and just marches off like a boss.
Which is interesting, because that line, and there's an earlier line in that scene where one of the ants says, the workers control the means of production.
Yes.
And it's so... It's kind of incongruous, because that's something that's commonly associated with communism, because Lenin said it, or Marx said it, the workers control the means of production. And so it's sort of like, well, does that take away from the idea that this is an anti-communist movie? Because here you have the people rising up and saying that.
Well, they realize it all of a sudden. It's not that they knew it all along. So
yeah, I think it's open to interpretation. I think the fairest way to say it is that one way you could say it is it's sort of demonstrating that, well, yeah, the workers control the means of production, but that doesn't mean that the system works.
Well, and then they have this big peace rally as well, where they're singing, all we are saying is give Z a chance, which, it's, I'm not saying it's a masterful joke. It's just, they brought all this political air into the movie.
And it is a significant scene, though, because you've got, not only do you have the worker uprising, which is sort of like the Prague Spring in the 60s, except that they didn't all get killed. You have the worker uprising, but you also have the military looking and seeing a soldier.
Yes, and getting upset with that.
Yeah, and that's almost more irritating to him than the workers rising up, because that's an internal threat. That's one of us is siding with them. Yeah. We have to eliminate him.
Well, and he would have been eliminated in all likelihood if he had gone off to war against the termites, but he stands out like a sore thumb, so it's amazing that they didn't realize that Weaver might not be one of the dirt movers, but in fact he's a soldier, because he's gigantic in comparison.
Well, and also apparently all the ants are colorblind. Because that was one of the things where they're like, oh, hey, who are you? And it's like, well, he's red, you're yellow, he's a soldier, you're a worker. I figured this out, I've been in this universe for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like, you haven't noticed that they're all different skin tones?
I noticed, but I didn't really strike any any
Oh yeah,
chords?
yeah.
I didn't really think about it.
Yeah,
honestly.
the answer are the warrior ants are definitely more red.
Oh, maybe that's how they got
Yeah.
selected when they were larvae. Then
Maybe
I don't know.
I think that was another shot that was open to interpretation.
Possibly.
You know, but yeah. So we have Z is out there. He's looking for Insectopia.
And he winds up on a picnic blanket,
Yeah.
surrounded by food, that's the first place that they mistake is Insectopia.
Yeah.
And they try to get to the sandwiches, and the bees, Muffy and Chip, are going to help them get something to eat.
Right.
But then we're brought back to the savagery of the outside world when Muffy gets annihilated.
She just gets the crap killed out
by a
of her.
fly swatter. It
Yeah.
was brutal.
And I mean, it's like, damn, and then when you see Chip,
Yeah.
again, it's like it's not even funny.
No, it's depressing.
It's depressing. He's drunk because his wife was just crushed to death,
Well-
who he obviously genuinely loved.
And what's a dark joke to it is that when Z does run into him later, Chip literally climbs out of a scotch bottle. So he
Right.
is deep in the bottle
Yeah.
after his
Yeah.
wife dies. So there's that going on. But yeah, Muffy does get killed, and Bala, the guy who killed Muffy with the fly swatter, gets up to walk away from the picnic and steps on Bala when you think she's dead for a second, but then it turns out she's stuck to the gum on the bottom of his shoe.
Right.
So Z has to spring into action and be the actiony hero again to go and rescue her. And
the most perfectly delivered line in the entire movie was when they're both stuck to the gum underneath the
And
kid's
the penny.
shoe. When the penny is coming and Woody Allen, just the way he delivers, who the hell is
that?
It's just so good.
It
He
is.
delivers that.
Oh man.
It's like that. Yeah, that's perfect. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was a great moment.
Like that's what you're gonna think at that moment.
Yep. That's giant copper face coming at you.
Yeah. So I mean, but they eventually do end up in.
Because he scrapes him off with a penny, right?
Yeah.
And that's why he sees Lincoln's face.
So they end up in Insectopia, which is literally just a garbage can.
Yeah, because that's where the guy flings the gum, is
Right,
in the garbage
right.
can, and so then at first they're panicking and everything's terrible, but then they're like, oh no, this is Insectopia, and there's just some naivete to it, because it's like, you just thought a picnic blanket was Insectopia, now the garbage can is.
Right.
But it's everything that the drunk guy at the bar was telling him it would be. There's food everywhere. It's it's a bug's paradise.
Yeah.
So, and I loved how they played that off too, is because you naturally have your romantic montage between Z and Bala.
Yeah.
Because they fall in love at Insectopia, aka the garbage can. And they also play it like it's a theme park.
Right.
Because
yeah.
there's an apple that has several holes that have been chewed through it by a worm, and the ants are riding the back of the worm as he's like roller coastering through
Yeah,
the apple.
yeah.
And then they make snow angels on a powdered sugar donut, and they ride on a little leaf boat through a little love canal. It's crazy.
And it's so interesting that the hero, the thing that gets you into Act 3 is really when, God, I keep wanting to say Chopper. Cutter. Right, Chopper's the rapey one. That's right. when Cutter shows up and takes Bala.
Yeah, because they're actually sitting around the fire, and you have the philosophical
This tastes
mosquito.
like poop. Really? Let me see.
It is crap.
It does taste like crap. Pretty
But
good.
they're like stoner thoughts with these bugs, because it's like a mosquito and some other random bugs sitting around their little campfire, and one of them's like, what if like we're just these tiny little things, and we're just like part of this whole other huge universe that's like so big we don't even know exists.
Right.
And the ladybug is like, man, that is so deep.
Well, yeah, and it's so interesting because it's like, so Insectopia or Utopia is basically this place with a bunch of stoners sitting around doing nothing and eating garbage.
And achieving nothing, not moving toward
and
anything.
they will never go from where they are to anything better.
Well, it's just a grass is always greener situation, because his version of paradise is very lacking in productivity or like having any kind of goals or life. It's like your life can be garbage in paradise, I guess.
Well, I mean, shows that, it depends on what you're used to, forms what you think is the best,
Yeah.
it's like the saying, in the valley of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. They are from the valley of the blind. They've lived in this sheltered, very, very, structured existence,
And anything that's different is still appealing, no matter how lacking it is.
Yeah, I mean, they come from something like the Soviet Union, where you can punish somebody so easily because you just deny them the basics of life. You don't get food today.
They're already in a tough situation.
Yeah,
so...
what are you going to do? You can't go to the store and buy food. I'm just not going to give you any food, and then there isn't any for you.
But I would like to commemorate this moment because Christopher Walken, Cutter, he's flying in to get Bala, as you mentioned a minute ago, and I want to give him a medal for having the singular awesome dad joke in this movie, because he's one of the ants that can fly. So he flies in and then drops down amongst the other bugs and says, "Oh, I was in the neighborhood and I thought I'd drop in."
But Christopher Walken saying it.
Yes, it was brilliant.
Now,
I just thought I'd drop in.
And we see, and this is what's interesting too, is that the whole movie, there's been this vague sort of hint that Mandible's up to something. Mm-hmm. You kind of know it involves the tunnel.
Well, we know it. The audience knows it.
They had revealed it. Oh, yes, that's right.
Because he's plotting with Cutter and he's telling them like.
No, because the reveal was in the scene when Bala was in his office. Because remember, she found the papers.
That's where you figure out, I think, that
it's a flood.
That it's a flood.
Yeah.
But I think before he had actually told Cutter because he specifically told Cutter that he was sending the soldiers to be killed by the termites. So we know that at the very least.
Yeah, he's doing something that he wants.
Something nefarious, yeah.
But you don't really know what the plan is. Like, you don't know the big James Bond bad guy plan until
you don't know the specifics. That's true.
Yeah, and it's like 15 minutes before the end of the movie. Yeah,
because, now Bala's been abducted by Cutter and she's going back to the colony, and Z is sitting there arguing with himself. He's just like, "Oh, well, I should go get her, but I'm nothing but a soil relocation engineer. Yeah. Like, how could I ever do anything about that?" And then he comes to the obvious conclusion, well, no, I've got to go get her. It's the right thing to do.
Right.
And that's when we see Chip again. He crawls out of the scotch bottle, and he's like, "Oh, I can help you with that." And he flies him drunkenly back to the colony.
How about a cup of Joe first? There's time for a cup of...
He was like, "There's like a puddle of coffee over there. Like, you sure you don't want some coffee first?" And the bee is just going all over the place. So I thought this was funny because Chip gets Z back to the colony, and then Bala is in the general's office, and Z has to scoot across a little ledge in order to get to Bala to break open the sort of window where she's being held. And I was like, wait a minute, can't ants climb?
That was exactly what I was thinking. Like, why doesn't he just climb up the side of it?
Who knows? Because he was climbing all those blades of grass and climbing all out in the nature, and then he just couldn't do it in the actual colony.
It's a movie. You should really just relax.
Yeah, we gotta continue to suspend our disbelief.
And honestly, the rest of the movie really is... if you watch it for the first time and you get to this point, you can just skip ahead to the last 30 seconds of it, because it's just, they're going to flood it and then they stop it.
Yeah, General Mandible has all the workers, and it's a ruse because he has had them all working double overtime and extra shifts to complete the megatunnel, which actually leads to a pond that they're going to, mine into, and then the pond is going to drown them in their colony. So they're all in this big atrium where they think that they're being rewarded for their good work, because General Mandible earlier, he kind of discredits Z, and he's like, "Yeah, you all love Z and you're saying give Z a chance, but where is he now? He abducted our princess and he's not here to help you, so I'm going to reward you by..."
They're stupid.
Yeah, if you finish the megatunnel...
Oh yeah, that's right, he's not here.
Oh no, I wonder why. But
Surely
the general...
he's not off doing something really important.
Oh, clearly not. But the general says, "I'm going to reward all of your hard efforts by giving you the day off." Yeah. And like you said, it's so easy to reward or punish people in a situation, because a day off to them is just like a king's ransom worth of a prize. It's crazy awesome. But yeah, so it turns into this quick thing where Z rescues Bala. It's great. They discover the sinister plans to drown all the workers and the queen. so that they can start over and get rid of the weak of the colony. Yeah. So they're rushing to fix everything. And
Mandible is a eugenicist.
Yes.
He is, he's an Oliver Wendell Holmes type person. You identify the weak, however the hell you do that. You identify the undesirables, however the hell you do that.
Yeah.
And then you just declare them not worth saving and kill them. And I loved the fact that in the end it was Cutter
who saved the day,
who ended up saying, no, that's bullshit. This is for the good of the colony.
Right, because Cutter's just kind of a yes man throughout most of the movie. Even when he goes to get Bala, she goes, Cutter, I'm staying here. And he's just like, look, princess, I have orders. That's his argument. But yeah, so what ends up happening is all the ants work together to actually climb on top of each other and build a huge ladder to get themselves to safety.
Which was set up in the beginning of the movie with the wrecking ball.
Yes, we didn't talk about that. They build a little wrecking ball to tear down some stuff. Well, because Z is like, oh yeah, what's not to love about being a piece of construction equipment, right, or whatever it is he says.
And it's funny too because it was a bit and it was funny and it was well done. And I didn't actually usually when I watch a movie and something is being set up. Most of us nowadays, if you've seen enough movies,
you know where it's headed.
You can go, well, we'll see this again.
Well, it's like
I really didn't see that coming again, that was going to be the thing that they were setting up, that they would use that at the end.
Well, because it was silly. It wasn't like in I, Robot where Will Smith teaches the robot how to wink, where that was super obvious that would come into play later.
Thank you, Will Smith.
But
beep boop.
It was actually presented as a funny moment when Z... he doesn't have the strength to hold on to the wrecking ball, and he's the connecting piece. And he goes, "Oh, I dropped the ball," and you're just like, "Okay, that's great." So I guess that was the other good dad joke in the movie. But anyway, they make a big ladder where they actually climb to the top of the atrium that they're in, and meanwhile, Mandible's outside with Cutter and the rest of the quote unquote worthy soldiers, saying, "We've wiped the slate clean. We've gotten a new era is coming upon us." And then the Z punches through the soil. Yeah. And, that's what Cutter says. He's got that great moment because Cutter looks down and Mandible's like, "Who the hell is that?" And he goes, "I believe it's the weak element, sir."
Yeah.
And he starts to go help the ants start to get out. And Mandible actually goes to tackle Z and plummets to his death. Cutter actually rescues Z by taking the hit for him and then goes down into the water, and Cutter gets out and he lives and it's great. But he's the one who turned things around because he punches the general in the face and he's like, "Yep, that's the weak element. That's them."
And that's whenever he points to Z, he says, "No, this is for the good of the colony."
Yes, because they're the ones who make all of this possible.
Yeah.
But and Z sums it up, I think, better than anybody can. I mean, Stallone is just like, "Yeah, you the ant," and high fives him because he's Weaver.
Yeah.
But then it ends very abruptly after that. There's that big moment. It does.
Yeah, I mean, it's over. That's it.
Yeah.
Movie's done.
Because Z sums it up by saying, "Well, there you have it. Your average boy meets girl, boy likes girl, boy changes underlying social order story."
Yep.
And incidentally, Bala and I are thinking of starting a family. Just a few kids, maybe 1 million or 2 to begin with. And it's
so
crazy.
Does that mean he's going to do it with her 1 million times, or is it just...
I guess it depends on what kind of reproduction she's going for. Because whether it's the asexual or what.
Well, that's complicated.
It really is. That gives you even less chances to get laid, I guess, because your wife can just be like, "No, I can do this without you. No thanks."
Well, can we just do it for fun? No, it's procreation, not recreation.
And the final punch of the movie is when he's talking about the fact that he's seeing a new therapist who was really putting me in touch with my inner maggot. Which
is weird because ants don't come from maggots.
No, they don't.
Flies come from maggots. Ants are just... That jumped out at me when he said that. I was like, "You're going to a bad therapist."
Especially since they see larvae.
Maybe that's the joke, is that his new therapist is an idiot.
Either that or his new therapist is just helping him find a whole new facet of himself. Who knows?
I would say, and reasonable minds can disagree. I thought the animation of the movie was not anything I didn't think it was any good. I mean, it was, for the time, it was good. It was, you know, to me, it was kind of dull. But taking that out and just looking at it as a movie, on the does it stand up spectrum, I gotta say, this one's really high. This one, you know, and it's weird because for me, it's been so long since I've seen it. Really, in a sense, it was like seeing it for the first time. You know, just now,
right? Especially from the adult perspective,
yeah.
Because it's literally like an entirely different movie.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a movie that was a part of my life growing up. It was a movie that existed. I'd seen it. You know, I almost don't even think. Yes, the answer is it holds up because it really just stands up on its own as just a good movie. It's like watching a funny version of Animal Farm.
Oh yeah, like,
you know.
I think it actually it stems up there with Seinfeld because, like Seinfeld, I had the almost exactly the same reaction to this movie as I did to Seinfeld when I was a kid, because Seinfeld used to bore the hell out of me because I just didn't understand what the stakes were, like why they were upset about these menial little things. And Antz, like I said,
I could see it boring you as a kid.
Yeah, especially in comparison to Bug's Life.
Yes,
which is so much more animated and wacky and zany and fun. This movie it's like you said, it's like watching a completely different movie.
Yeah.
I just didn't appreciate it when I was a kid. It just came off as boring to me because I would have been only about 10 or 11 years old. So I was just like, okay, get to the fun parts. Just let's fast forward, whatever.
Right.
So yeah, I think this is almost Seinfeld-esque in that sense that it goes from an ugly little duckling when you're a kid to a beautiful swan as an adult, because the humor is just so up there. Yeah,
it's not even so much that it holds up, it's that it's a kid's thing that you really you can't appreciate it when you're a kid.
Exactly.
It's too
high quality.
Yeah, it's so not subversive, but there's so much concealed story and humor that you couldn't get it. You know, it's like watching a movie in another language before you learn the language.
Exactly, because with Shrek, you remember the basic plot points. You remember the jokes in general.
I mean, the jokes here are Woody Allen jokes. Kids don't watch Woody Allen movies.
Well, they shouldn't. I think that would produce a very strange child.
I watched a lot of them.
Case in point, Jason. Case in point.
But, also, too, I didn't realize until like the end of the movie that the name of the movie isn't actually just Antz. It's Aunt Z. Yeah. Because that's the hero of the movie is Aunt Z.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, oh.
We didn't mention that, but that is a thing.
Yeah, okay.
Because especially since it's sort of tilted away from the rest of the word.
Yeah, it's like it's not just a stupid title, It's, okay.
Yeah, it's a story about the ant.
Yeah, it's about Aunt
Z.
Z.
Yeah. So,
well, that's everything I got to say about it.
Yep, that's pretty much it, listeners. Thank you for tuning in once again to Hindsight is Horrifying. You can actually find us at hindsightishorrifying.com. Isn't that right, Jason?
Yes, it is.
As well as if you feel like reaching out to us and telling us just how horrible this podcast is, you can always email us. I am Darth Jader at hindsightishorrifying.com. Or you can reach me on Twitter if you want to get to, the insults a little more immediately. I am at Darth I am at Darth Jader.
Yeah, that worked.
Yeah, that was smooth.
Yeah. And if you want to get in touch with me, I have a CompuServe email address. I did.
I believe that.
I had a CompuServe email address.
I messed up my Twitter again. I've got to do it a third time. Sorry. It is at Darth Jader _. I just was messing up where the underscores are. What the hell with
the underscores?
Because Darth Jader was already taken.
So pick something else.
No, that's my handle, man.
All right, well, I am Jason at Hindsight is Horrifying. Hindsight. I have to...
Yeah, there's a D in that.
Yeah, there's a D. I have a problem with that. So did Winston Churchill, so back off.
Are you comparing yourself to Winston Churchill?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. I mean, he freed a lot of people from oppressive regimes too, Jason.
And how the hell do you know I haven't? Maybe I just don't go around bragging about it.
Chomping on your fat cigars. But yeah, it fits the theme of the episode is what I was going toward. Oh, God. Well, before we traumatize you anymore, listeners, we have to thank you for tuning in, and we will catch you next time.
Thank you very much for listening. Good night.